Hi again. Today we're going to be talking about relativism. Now, this is something that has come up quite a bit in the papers, and you probably don't even realize it. Moreover, you guys are probably a lot, I should say, uh, affected by it. You are influenced into it through other classes, through television, other sources of media, perhaps even your music. Uh, One of the things I dealt with earlier in the semester here was sociological concepts and morals, and they use the term norms a lot. And whenever we talk about norms, what we are talking about are accepted and rejected behaviors within a society. Now, the problem we have with that is it's not that we can't look at and say these are accepted and these are rejected. The problem comes when we think that just because they're accepted or just because they're rejected, they must be good or they must be evil, or that if they are acceptable, it doesn't necessarily mean that it. We have the tendency to believe that perhaps even if it's, I should say, rejected behavior, that's not necessarily bad, given that perhaps another society accepts it. When we take a sociological look at morality and say, well, this culture has this norm, well, we could take any amount of surveys and we could say, well, this society or this group of people accepts this behavior. That never tells us whether or not they ought to accept this behavior. For example, since Roe versus Wade, the landmark decision that made abortion legal in America, there have been over 40 million abortions performed. Uh, it seems to me that that would be accepted, given the sheer number of abortions, that at least 40 million people accept this behavior. Well, that does nothing to say whether or not they should accept this behavior or, not accept this behavior. So, but relativism says that that's merely what it is. Now, there are two types of relativism. Now, uh, this is going to pose a problem for the relativists, and you'll see why. The first type of relativism is cultural relativism. And cultural relativism says that good and evil or moral beliefs are relative to culture. Now, you could say, well, here in America, we have certain moral norms that we believe to be good and evil, accepted behaviors or rejected behaviors. Let's take slavery. Currently in America, we reject the behavior of owning slaves. We hold that as morally abominable. So, compared to, say, another country, somewhere, who knows where, we just pick any one, and let's pretend that they accept slavery. Would we say, well, slavery is good for us, or bad for us, but good for them? And according to relativism, you would say yes, that this aspect of good and evil is just merely relative to culture. In one culture it's accepted, in another culture it's rejected. But what about the culture of, say, the 1700s, where the slave trade was flourishing in America? People in the South certainly believed it was okay. Probably several in the North believed it was okay. That there were people, in Africa who sold slaves to the Americans. And so you had an industry that bought and sold humans, and we allowed the use of other human beings as beasts of burden. And you say, well, the culture of the 1700s versus, say, the culture of the 21st century, 2013 per se, perhaps, you'd say, well, here now our culture holds that it's wrong, but the culture back then, felt that it was okay. Okay, so you have the two American cultures. The real question is, why would we change? Now, we did change. We could describe that. We could describe how people's feelings and thoughts on the subject changed. But the real question is, should they have changed? Did they change for the better? Or did they merely just change for the different? See, relativism cannot say they changed for the better. It has no ability, cultural relativism that is, has no ability to judge between two cultures as though one is better or worse. All cultural relativism can do is judge whether or not they are different. And so it cannot tell us why we should change or that we should change. It can only tell us that we did change. And again, that's a descriptive account of morality. It is not, does not account for the ought in morality. It doesn't tell us that we should have. Another problem with this, with cultural morality, or cultural relativism, I should say, is that we have to ask the question, well, how do we define a culture? In America, there are 50 states, at least as of the time of the making of this video, and perhaps we'll add another one sometime in the future, and I'll not take this video down, but for now there's 50. Are there different cultures within the 50 states? Certainly. Texas has much different culture, a much different culture than does California. Our voting record reflects that. We have different things that we value, different things that we accept and reject. But even then, we have different subcultures within that culture. What about the different races? You have the Asian community, you have the black community, the white community, the Hispanic community. We could break culture up along those lines, races, and see that we have different things that we value and different things that we see to be good and evil, perhaps. So could we judge one culture in that regard as better or worse than the other? On the other hand, we could even keep going farther. The white culture, there's several different cultures within the white culture, and there's several different subcultures within the black communities and Hispanic communities as well. You have religious groups within any one of these communities that overlap. You have, say, Christianity within all of these subgroups, and then you have atheists that, you have atheist black people, you have atheist white people, and and then you have people who are just let's say you have in the white group, you have somewhere down in the deep south somewhere a bunch of toothless guys who still think along racial lines, in the sense that they're Klans members. I mean, their subgroup. Would you say that lynching and racism may be good for them, but it's bad for us? And would you say, that they're no worse off than the rest of the cultures? They're just merely different because they have a different set of accepted and rejected behaviors. Now, the problem here that I'm trying to point out is that there is no clear line of demarcation of cultures within a community, and it just keeps going down. There are different cultures within cultures, and so how do you say, well, this culture believes this and this culture believes that? Should one literally accept the beliefs of one culture? And this is what leads to the next theory, which is individual relativism, which states that morals are just nothing more than any individual's beliefs about a subject and accepted and rejected behaviors. And you've heard this a lot. You just go, people say, well, I believe this. I think this is wrong. To me, every time you hear to me or I believe, what we're generally giving is a relativistic account according to the individual. Well, I think abortion's wrong, but don't let me push my view on you. That's saying that there is no right or wrong, or perhaps we can't even know if there is a right or wrong, and it's up to the individual, not even up to the culture. One of the problems with cultural relativism is it always breaks down to the individual, because you can't, there's so many subcultures, and even within the subcultures, I mean, it always just disintegrates into the individual. With the individual relativism, if that's the case, if individual relativism is true, then what it's saying is there really is no objective moral value. There are only subjective moral positions to the self, and that, say, rape and murder and incest and lying and cheating, they're not really wrong. It's just your moral preference that this is unacceptable to you, but it may be okay to others. Now, you hear this a lot in politics, especially over the uh, pro-life, pro-choice position, where you'll hear politicians who want to get elected who say they want the pro-life vote, but they also want the pro-choice vote. And so what they're going to try to do is they're going to straddle the fence. They're going to say, well, personally, I'm pro-life, but I believe a woman should have a right to choose. So really what they're saying is they're pro-choice, politically, that they believe that it's legally okay for a woman to have an abortion, but it's their personal opinion that one ought not have it, or at least not good for them. And that is a clear-cut example of relativism. Or somebody may say, well, homosexuality, I don't like it, but I don't want to push my views on you. Again, this is a relativistic account of things that says individualistically that it's down to the person. One may not prefer to have, same-sex relations, but who are they to push on somebody else? And of course, any culture, now they're also judging a whole culture that may do this. Oh, what culture, any culture that believes that this is wrong, certainly they shouldn't do this. Now, another problem with relativism is you can't live by it. Because at the end of the day, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to make a claim that given that there are no objective, moral realities independently of ourselves. Let me restate that. Given that there are no independently existing truths about morality, I should say, that good and evil don't exist independently of our own thoughts. Given that, who are we to push our moral views on others? That simply said, we should not push our moral views on others because there is no moral truth. Well, the problem with that statement is that is a moral claim that we should not do something. That is, we should not push our views on others. As though it's morally evil to push our moral views on others. But if there are no moral truths, then that statement itself cannot be true. It cannot be true that it is wrong to push one's moral opinion on somebody else if there are no moral truths. So that's a problem. It's self-referentially defeating. It's like saying there's no such thing as truth, and that's a true statement. Well, it's a true statement, then it can't be, because there's no such thing as truth, right? Well, there is truth. But, so anytime somebody says that, says, oh, well, I don't want to push my views on you. Well, you may not want to. But are you telling me that I should not push my views on others? That's a much different story, because if you tell me I shouldn't push my views on other people, then what you're saying is there is at least one moral truth that is not relative, that is objective, that all cultures must abide by it, or at least all individuals should. But if there's at least one, there should be others. There will be others. And I would say that this is a profound weakness of relativism in and of itself. Second, relativism one cannot live by. You can't sit there and say, well, maybe bad for me to lie, or I don't like it when you lie, but it's okay for me to lie. Well, that doesn't seem to work, because as soon as something happens to you, somebody lies to you, you start crying foul as though something really is wrong. And something really is wrong when people lie and cheat and steal, from you. So you can't live by relativism. You may try to, that is, make up your own rules, but the problem at the end of the day is people break them. They break real rules. So we've got two types of relativism: cultural relativism, and we have independent relativism. I'd like you to know the differences and be able to describe the differences. And I'd also like you to be able to apply them to ethical theories, for example, or not ethical theories, ethical issues. For example, if I told you, let's take a case of abortion, or let's take the case of slavery, or let's take the case of something more personal, maybe a spouse cheating on you, or you cheating on your spouse, how would you apply relativism? Now, from a cultural standpoint, I would like you to be able to apply these things. So the assignment here is, let's take the spousal fidelity, the cheating on your spouse. Let's take that. I want you to take a couple paragraphs. I want you to first explain what cultural relativism is, and then I want you to explain in another paragraph what individual relativism is. From there, I want you to take a third paragraph and describe to me uh, marital fidelity. According to uh, according to cultural and independent relativism, I would like you to give an answer to whether or not um, one should be faithful, should not be faithful, can be faithful, may not be faithful. I want you to discuss marital fidelity from the outlook of the other person and from yourself. And tell me what conclusions you can draw from relativism when it comes to marital fidelity. And I will look at your papers, and hopefully you reflect to me that you've learned something here. Talk to you soon.